I'm trying to become as much of a silent
Mhm.
partner as possible because, again, there's only 24 hours in a day.
Welcome back, investor, to another episode of Passive Income Adventures. We have a little something different for you today. We are going to be talking about entrepreneurship and passive income and just figuring out what the difference is between running a business and investing in somebody else's business, talking about the pros and cons, all of that. And our guest today is Mike Hoffman, Mr. Passive. Mike, thanks for being with us today.
Emma, thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah, and one of the things that we like to do on this podcast is not just talk about passive investing, because I really specialize in real estate. We have a real estate fund where people put their money in and we just give them money back. They don't work in our business. They're limited partners, right? Where they just put money in and they get money back. It's a very distribution dividend type of model, or interest income if they're one of our private lenders. But what you're doing is a little bit more of a business that you're running, but it's a hands off business. So can you talk to us a little bit about what that means and how you got into this?
Yeah, so I think the first step with anything in my kind of mind of thinking is relating it back to software. And software, you build it once and it just sells on repeat from there. That's
Mhm.
what I try to take with entrepreneurship, with cash flowing assets, whether that's our Airbnb and truly trying to make it passive by finding a property management group I fully trust and can handle the fires without coming to me for them. And even the same thing with some of my vending machine routes all across the country and trying to put systems in place that once they're cash flowing, you can build out systems to make them passive. And then eventually those cash flowing assets will drive the truly passive things like what you're doing. So that's just kind of how my mindset works with regards to any type of investment or entrepreneurship thing I want to get started in.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your background, where you're from, what
Yeah.
more about the business that you're running and how you got into that business? So it's so interesting to hear the background story of how everybody got into what they're doing.
Yeah, so I definitely am not mainstream. I grew up in rural Iowa on a very small town of 600. Literally, it was a stop on I-80. I ended up working at the McDonald's right on the interstate there. So looking back on it now, when I was 15 years old, working at one of probably the most successful entrepreneurship stories and franchise history with McDonald's is fascinating. But yeah, I fell into my parents, especially my dad. He was an entrepreneur. He had me doing like selling lemonade and water as a young kid to the community. So that entrepreneur DNA was always in my bone. But I actually went to school in exercise science and went to college and studied that. And that's my background is in strength conditioning and collegiate athletics initially, and I was literally making $1,200 a month for my active
Wow.
income, and that's when I was like, "Okay, I gotta start investing in other assets and things that will earn with, quote, unquote, "my mind, not my time." So I got my first rental back in the Midwest when I was coaching, and that's when I started to just build out other streams that weren't active.
Okay, so what are you doing right now as far as your different income streams? Because what we were talking about before the show is I always talk about like active income, that's your day job, an active business that you're running where you actually have to show up and go to work. Like no one's making money if you're not working, right? And
Yep.
then residual income where you're setting it up and then enjoying the income, or occasional maintenance. It's like the merry-go-round where you have to give it a lot, but then every once in a while you can look away from it and maybe just check on it. And then the passive income that you're talking about is like dividend distribution. Tell us about what you're working on and what's your biggest source of income
Yeah.
and what are you really working hard to build right now?
Yeah, so peeling that back a little bit, if we look at active income, right now, I help build vending routes for people across the country, and I run a business that will go out to properties, like the properties in your portfolio
Yep.
currently, 100 units plus, and be like,
Mhm.
"Hey, property A, you're probably freaking out about interest rates and or your loans are coming up or what have you. Do you want a revenue source, okay, a rev share with a vending machine?" And they're like, "Yeah, absolutely." "Do you want to offer an amenity to your residents?" "Absolutely." So 90% of my time right now is talking to REITs, talking to properties about putting in these luxury amenities like micro markets and 21st century type vending machines into their properties and then setting it up so it's a revenue share to them, no cost to the property. And then what I do is I hand those locations to vendingpreneurs in our community where we help them build vending routes. So let's say Emma lives in Dallas. I talk to let's say a property group in Dallas that needs a property, needs a micro mart and a property in Plano. Emma wants to take that on. So I'll negotiate that for Emma. And then now you have that's probably my most active time wise
Mhm.
job right now. And then if we talk about the residual merry-go-round, I've never heard of that before, but I do have a vending route here in Oregon where I live that I'm on it. It's like an R&D for the bigger community, so to speak, where we're always testing new things, whether that's new machines, whether that's new product concepts, whether that's whatever. And so that one is definitely a merry-go-round where like we have a machine getting delivered Wednesday and I have an operator that runs all of that, but I'm still very aware of what's happening. And
Right.
then my third thing, which is more of my residual dividends, is I do have ownership in a couple vending routes that I am not operating remotely. I bought a vending route back in the Midwest in a bigger city, and one of our vendingpreneurs is running it. And then I have another one out east, same thing, which are basically like every month I get a dividend. And if they have a question that I can help answer remotely, maybe once a week or something, I'll do that.
Okay. Yeah, interesting because you really have covered if you cover the gamut when you're talking about different kinds of partners. So I always think about it like you've got your general partners, but then you have a managing partner inside of that group who is in charge of most of the day to day. And then the other people in the group can be considered maybe like silent partners. And that sounds like what you're talking about with the remote vending routes. And then you've got your limited partners who people are they're just putting in money. They do not work in the business at all. They basically are straight up investors, almost like lenders in that case. And you seem like you really come across all three of those. Is what you're doing with the vending machine more like a franchise or what does the structure of that look like if you're setting up a business like that?
Yeah, it's similar to a franchise in that we really try to help them get off the ground, but it's not like they are setting up their own company, they're ordering the machines, all of that. We're just helping them literally get off the ground with regards to finding leads,
Hmm.
things like that. But I do like your point about the different types of partners because even like our Airbnbs and stuff, I might be a little bit of a managing partner to start, but I'm trying to become as much of a silent
Hmm.
partner as possible because, again, there's only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah, exactly. I think there are like legal designations sometimes that in the finance world or in the securities world, there are legal designations about what type of partner there is. And there are different rules depending on what type of partners you have in a business. And when you start getting into taking on limited partners, that's a whole nother ball of SEC compliance of filing your Form D and making sure you're advertised correctly. And it's a much, much bigger deal. And so I think a lot of times what's a better a fit for small businesses, more like what you're talking about, where you have like more of a joint venture partnership or some sort of a licensing agreement or whatnot. Because the minute you start taking on investors, just pure investors, it's like selling stock, right? And so you either on that one, you either have to go bigger or don't bother. Yeah. So that's one thing that we talk about a lot on this show is what's the difference between a limited partner, passive income, and a hands-off business. So can you tell us a little bit like what one of your days looks with the different kinds of things that you're working on?
Yeah, just like a day in the life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can even talk about today.
Your
First thing,
podcast recording and you
yeah, no, I think the first thing we always do is I'm big into human performance. So I worked out this morning, I got in the
Mhm.
cold plunge, I got in the sauna, and then right away I had a call with a property group up in the Northeast in New Jersey. They have 144 properties that their assets that they're looking at this type of modern amenity for revenue share opportunity. Then we have this podcast, which is a lot of fun. And then I dive right into another asset manager meeting here down in LA and then another one down in Atlanta and then go right into a company that goes after government RFIs for vending in government buildings. My kind of day-to-day focus is really trying to tee up our vendingpreneurs to have leads, so to speak, in their markets to hit the ground running with their vending routes wherever they live.
Nice. Nice. Okay, so I want to ask about the performance, human performance, the athlete side of things. But before
Yeah.
we do that, I had a listener tell me recently, she'll know who she is, that when she listens to an episode of this with her partner, they're always like, maybe we should do this. Like, it's like the shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
After this, should we get a vending machine route? Can you speak to that a little bit on how to? be both streamlined and focused on a niche like you are with vending machines, but also how to diversify. We can't, like you said, they're only 24 hours in a day and you can't be an
Mhm.
expert at everything. So I would love to hear your thought before we move on to the other one. Like, how do people decide what they're going to do without falling to this shiny object syndrome?
Yeah, that's why I love your analogy of like active to passive and everywhere in between. Because you think about like how much income or how much capital is to get started in a niche. Like the only reason I got into vending was I couldn't keep coming up with a down payment for real estate. And I love real estate. Like I have,
Totally.
however, three rentals, short term, long term, etc. But I 20% down, especially going into COVID. That's what led me to reading an article about vending. Like, I didn't go to college about snacks and
Yeah.
candy, but it became full circle because I studied human performance. And when I'm sitting in an airport and I want a snack and don't want to wait in line to spend 30 bucks for a burrito at the airport, I went to the vending machine and it's one, these machines are empty. Two, there are no healthy options.
Hmm.
And three, someone is charging $4 for a water that costs 10 cents at Costco. So clearly the margins for this business are very lucrative. And then four, no one is standing here selling me that water. So someone is making money off of me without their time. And so that's what got me into, at the end of the day, like my number one priority is freedom. And that's where back to your whole diversification talk track, like I'm just trying to find as many different dividends and diversification to give me more time to spend with my family, to work out, to work on my health, and to travel the world. That's the whole passion behind whether it's vending, whether it's real estate, whatever it may.
Yeah. I want to hear more about how you got into it because I know one of the situations that we're in, we're investors in a couple of different sports and health startups, and the athletes will come to me and they'll say, "Yeah, I'm in a third tier sport or a minor league sport,
Mhm.
and I'm not making great money, but I
Yep.
put myself out there every day and basically let the bad guys of the world shoot at me, right? And they have to be very focused on what it is that they're doing because, especially in a minor league where they're maybe trying to move up to the big show and they don't have time or the mental energy to be thinking about what am I going to do after sports? Like they really have to focus hard in on sports, but they're just not making a very good income. And so I see this again and again, like people who have a lot of mental grit, people who have a lot of focus, people who are really able to just go out and do really hard things, but they might not be getting paid that well for it. It sounds like a similar story to what you're saying when you're a performance coach and you're like, I am not making any money and trying to figure out like how to balance your passion with actually being able to support your family. So can you walk us through that transition that you had? 'Cause it sounds like then you had another one when you moved from okay, I need to be making more money and figuring out what that's going to look like. Then you got into real estate and you're like, and I'm out of money again. Take us through that process of how it worked for you.
Yeah, and you're spot on. You think of baseball, you think of golf, you think of any of these sports where the minor leagues are just a minor league baseball player might be lucky to make 40 grand a year and they're on a
Mhm.
bus 12 hours to play their next game and it's a total grind. If they put that signing bonus to work with someone like you, like 10% returns, then they can truly focus on baseball. But yeah, I think for me, it just there was that combination of I got really excited with the whole like someone was paying rent and paying off my mortgage and I was making a profit off the top of that with real estate and I wanted more of that whole kind of dividend income and or semi-passive income. So then I was just exploring other asset classes and what can I do without having to crank out 20% of a down payment on a asset class every single property. So that's what tied me into vending. And people don't really realize this with like vending machines, but vending machines are no different than cars. So when you go buy a vending machine, the first question they'll ask you is, do you want to put no money down or do you want to pay for it? And
Mhm.
then it's you can literally get off the ground and running with a vending machine for less than $1,000. So, like, for me, it's super easy to scale that cash flow that ultimately would allow me to buy more properties, and it was just a flywheel of, "Okay, now I have that residual income coming in every month," and I did this during my active income, so I had a full-time I was in a leadership role in a startup out of Menlo Park, Silicon Valley, traveling 3 weeks a month while building this out and still having my properties on the more passive side of the spectrum. You just gotta start when it comes down to it.
And walk us back through like how did you find it in the first place? And then how did you learn? how to do it because I had a guest on, I don't know, it's probably like a year ago almost now, who was doing laundromats, and he was a pastor making nothing. And he basically had to go in and figure out how to make more money. And so he bought a laundromat thinking it would be a passive hands off business. And he quickly found out that he got sold. He overpaid for the asset. And I just didn't know what I was doing. And he had to quit being a pastor when he bought more laundromats. And he really was like, I really got to focus on this as my business. And now he teaches other people how to buy laundromats so that they don't go for the same kind of wool pulled over his eyes, thinking it would be passive when it really wasn't. So can you
Yeah.
walk us through like how you found this, how you learned how to do it, and how
Yeah.
you make sure that it doesn't become like the beast that becomes a real business and you're like, wait a second, I think before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So similar concept. I read an article about a guy that was making 15 grand a month working 20 hours a week with vending machines.
Hmm.
That was pre-COVID, and I was like, "Wow, there's something to this." I live in a college town. I went into an apartment right next to campus that just seemed like high foot traffic and
Hmm.
college kids and what have you, and I just went into the front desk and I was like, "Hey, do you guys have vending machines here?" And she was like, "Oh, no, we don't. Would you like to talk to the manager?" And I was like, "Sure." I straight up asked the manager, I was like, "Hey, any interest in vending machines?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, would you do snacks and drinks?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Would you do healthy options? We don't want just Pepsi only products." And I was like, "Oh, yeah." Explain my background in human performance.
Hmm.
And she's like, We want a vending machine." I didn't even know where to go find a vending machine. I didn't even know if I should send a contract for her. Like, I literally went to Doctor Google and I typed in vending machines, and the machine I found for this location, the only reason I went with them is because they're based out of Iowa, which is where
Hmm.
the manufacturer is literally based out of Des Moines, which is where I'm from. And so I went to this company. They're like, "Okay, this machine's going to be $5,000. Do you want to finance it?" And I was like, "Sure. What are the terms?" They were like, "Zero money down, 5 year, 60 month." The interest rates at the time, I think, were going to be 7% on this $5,000 machine. So my monthly payment was going to be 100, I think, $15. And my first payment wasn't due until 90 days after it was installed. So I'd have
Hmm.
90 days of machine sales before my first $120 payment. I installed that machine. I was literally doing $1,200 a month with that machine. My cost of goods was 40%. So let's just say $500, my $120 machine payment. And all of a sudden, I'm like, holy cow, this is cash flowing double my real estate property. And I didn't have to put any money.
Yeah.
Let's
That
go find some more.
Okay, so I'm immediately going in my head. I have 3 adult kids who are getting caught up in this, whatever's going on in the economy. I don't think I realized when my oldest was like, what, how old was she? In 2008, she was 10 years old. And I know that the economy goes in 10-year cycles, right? So it didn't occur to me in 2008 and 2009 that the next downturn 10
Mhm.
years from now, when my little kids at the time would be graduating college and coming into the workforce. But that's exactly what's going on. They're coming into the workforce when it's just like, what is going on? It's a very weird recession. And they're getting caught up in it. But I'm thinking to myself, like, they're so overwhelmed by the thought of investing in real estate. They're invested in our fund for very little amounts of money because they just pool their money with our money. But then they're struggling once they're over 18 and they can't really, because we do accredited investors only. I don't know. My mind is all spinning now for the young
Well,
adult kids.
and you think of your laundry, the pastor's story, and that's what scares me to death. There's no doubt that buying boring businesses and the whole people my dad's age that never used a cell phone to run their business, like you could throw gas on that fire with regards to making it a healthier business. But you also, you don't know what you don't know. Like I hear laundromats and I think passive, but then you also think about like laundry machines and connected to water and like all the things that could go wrong with that type
Yeah.
of business that just
Well,
does not seem passive. Back to your point with the kids though, we have entrepreneurs in our community. We have one in Minneapolis. He has 4 kids that are a little bit younger than yours. They're gearing up to go to college. So what he's done, it's cool. He has 35 machines now. He's given each kid a machine to pick the products, set the prices. So they're literally doing a living economy 101 class with each of their vending machines and competing against each other. And I'm just like, that is so fascinating. You want to talk about teaching your kids freaking supply and demand. There's no better way than a vending machine.
yeah, wow. How would somebody get started? Let's say, tell me who, first of all, your ideal client is for your preneur client. What do they look like? Demographics, where do they live? What type of person, income, all that. Describe that to me. And then if they're like, you know what, any listener, you know what, that really describes me. What are the next steps and what are they looking for? If they don't want to do it themselves, they want some guidance and have you help them set up those routes. What would be involved in that? And what does that look like when you are helping them get started?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I've had a lot of like ideal customer profile just going through our current vendingpreneurs. And the fascinating thing is 95% of our community is parents.
Mm.
And they also probably 98% of the community also have a day job. And I'll say this all the time right out of the gates. Vending is not get rich quick. So if you're trying to leave your job tomorrow, you probably should have started building your vending route yesterday because it's not a one for one immediately. Like you got to build it type of thing. The second thing is with regards to vending, it doesn't matter when you stock a machine, it just needs to be done consistently. So if you have a
Mhm.
day job, if you're going to do it on your way to work, let's say you work from home and around noon you go Zoom crazy and you just want to go out to the grocery store, you can do it on your way to the store. Like it just needs to be done consistently. It doesn't matter if it's early riser, late night, or middle of the day, you work from home type of situation. And then what it entails, we're big into holding your hand through the whole process. So obviously finding leads is top of the funnel, but then we get into, okay, where do I go find product to put in that machine? What do I set the prices in that machine? What marketing do we need to do so people go buy the machine? Like literally, we want to hold people's hands through the whole process because my background is as a coach and just like a
Mm.
teacher, you don't wanna just lead people to the water, you also want them to know how to drink it. So that's literally what we do. We have a couple different plans we help people. We have people that are like, "Oh, I'll just go pound the pavement and cold call and do all of that myself." And then we have other people that are like, "My time's worth way more than that. Will you guys do it for us?" So we have in-house cold call and email specialists. So it's we offer a different spectrum of things for those folks.
Okay, so you have a DIY done with
Yeah,
you type of Hormozy style, uh,
exactly.
choice
A
here.
DIY and a do it for you,
Yep.
100%.
Okay. Yeah. So you're really able to help people at any budget level. Because for people like, say, my kids, their time's not worth they,
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
professional context. They don't have a financial value attached to their time because they're working like $14 an hour jobs part time. And so to me, it's like somebody in that situation if they're willing to put in the hustle. But what do you do with somebody who's in that situation who doesn't know what to do? They're like,
yeah,
I'm willing to go out and do this, but I don't know
yeah.
how. I don't even know where to start. Is that where kind of the DIY version is?
Yeah,
Or
DIY, so we have a whole back end, I guess, basically, I baked in a course as part of it, so everything
Mhm.
from who you should go pop into, so is a YMCA better than an apartment complex, better than an air
Mhm.
and so where to go to do a pop in, but also what you should say, what you should bring with you, like, you actually do need to bring a marketing flyer and a tape measure so you can actually if they the classic, "Oh, come over here by the fitness center and tell me if the machine will fit over here." Well, you just gotta have a little heads up with that. Contract templates for you to use with properties, where to go source your product, what to put in the machine. Like, all that stuff is what we teach inside the community, whether you have the done for you option. I think the done for you more is on the, like, lead gen side of going
Mhm.
out, picking up the phone and calling on your behalf versus you doing it yourself.
Okay. Yeah. It's fascinating. So then take me through the process of what it would look like. Let's say my husband and I, because he's left corporate already, we're running our fund and doing our thing, but he's always looking for like a business he can run with our kids. So he's it's
Yeah,
my business we want to involve you. So
yeah,
somebody more in that position where he's already busy
yeah.
and time does have more financial value attached to it. What does it look like for somebody more in that position?
Yeah, so that's actually what we have multiple, families in the community. So, in fact, one of my friends, a dad, he's a big developer in the Florida market, does a lot of, like, oil lube stations and Wawa type developments, but he's, "I want my daughter to get going on this." So we'll do a kickoff call with the family
Hmm.
outlining, "Here's where you need to go to find the content, here's your leads," and then they'll hand them on. We have kids in the community that are high school kids.
Hmm.
So, in this case from last week, their kid is, like, 22, so that they have a little more ability to take on the responsibility, but yeah, we have I truly think, and I'm obviously a little biased, but vending route is probably the easiest thing for your family. I'm to the point with my 3-year-old where she wants to go to Costco with me every
Yeah.
Saturday, go pick up vending product because she thinks it's the coolest thing ever to whip around in the shopping cart and just load that thing with a bunch of snacks and drinks for the machines, and then we take them to the
Mhm.
machine, and it's that whole. I'm not saying you're at that stage with your kids, but as far as getting going with your kids, there's that accountability, and then ideally with your kids, you're just the silent partner or something.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed with our apartment buildings or inside of our own network of apartment building owners, one thing that they talk about a lot is the vending machines that have a store
Mhm.
kind of
Yep,
a thing of milk because you're out of milk or it's like a little
yep,
package of eggs or medicine like
yep.
Tylenol or individual disposable diapers. It's those things you're like, oh, I don't want to run to the store for. And so is that something that each person can decide? Like we're gonna have a healthy snack one, we're gonna have a junk food one, and we're gonna have a essential, like, how does that work? Picking or does it depend on where it is, the
Yeah.
market, all that?
Yeah, and this is the beauty of these smart machines now is they're basically just locked coolers or locked shelves. And
Mhm.
so like for us with one of our machines, they wanted incidentals like laundry pods. They also wanted batteries because the doors in the apartment complex are residents constantly complain that the batteries have died or whatever and they come to the front desk and the front desk doesn't provide batteries. So we can do phone chargers, we can do everything you just rattled off like right now a big thing selling is sunscreen. So you just have shelves, just like a shelf at a grocery store, and you prioritize based on kind of the demographics too. Like if there's not a 7-Eleven within 10 minutes or a Wawa, it might be very snack and drink heavy. If there's not a CVS around, we might throw over the counter Tylenol. Or let's say they have a lot of short term tenants that always forget their phone chargers or want like a hangover type. They're downtown Nashville and it's an apartment complex that has a lot of short term tenants. That's something we usually do property by property. And then at the end of the day, the vendingpreneurs want more revenue, and so they're gonna cater to what the tenants are buying, and that's what we get into with regards to marketing psychology and doubling down in the type of niches that are selling in the machine.
What about roll of quarters where they have coin like laundry? I'm just thinking like, what is it that our
Yeah,
residents need that they are
yeah.
like, do you have a blank or do you have a blank laundry?
Rolls or quarters for the laundry. In theory, you could even do, like, cash or Visa cards for, like, people whatever.
If
We had a on the call this morning with the asset group, we got asked about pet items because they wanna put one of the machines right next to this in-house, like, pet spa. They're gonna offer to it's a brand new build, and they're putting this, like,
Mhm.
fancy "come wash your dog over here" lounge, and they want poop bags, and yeah, guys, we can 'kay, at the end of the day, if people are using that pet spa, we wanna put product in there they're gonna buy.
Yeah, no, hey, so all sorts of stuff you just never really even think about. So I want to ask you the magic question. I don't know if I've ever asked this question on the show before, but it comes up a lot in conversations when we're talking about different investing options or hands-off business options, things like that. The magic number for most people before inflation, I don't know what it is now, but people still say, I need to make $10,000 a month so I can leave my job.
Mhm.
So when you mentioned that it wasn't a get rich quick thing, but somebody's, I got some time, but I need to get to the point where I need to make $10,000 a month. I usually tell people, like, that's 10 rental houses that are paid off, right?
Mhm.
You spend 5 years buying them and then 5 years aggressively paying on the mortgage, $10,000 a month, that's a 10-year kind of a process. Or if you're gonna be completely passive limited partner, you need to have something like $2 million invested across stocks and limited partner, like apartment deals, private lending, things like that. And so what would you say, like, how many machines do you need on average? Because I know some are gonna outperform
Mhm.
others. If somebody came to you and said, "I need to make $10,000 a month," how long is that gonna take me, or how many machines do I need to have that up?
Yeah, so that's a really I've never been asked that question. So if you think about, let's say a machine does on average $1,500. We have micro markets that have the incidentals you talked about that are literally doing 10 grand a month. You want to do 10 grand, so 1,500 time, or I'd probably say 10 machines, that's 15 grand. Actually, let's say 12 to 13 machines. Ideally, you want to do 20K in revenue. Your cost of goods will be about 40%. You might have to pay some fees for the credit card reader. And then right there, you're taking home 10 grand. So there's two ways to do it. You can just build it from the ground up, which is obviously what we help people with. And that could take a year to 2 years, depending on how motivated you are and just going out and pounding the pavement. And then the other side of it is you can also buy existing routes. And so that's another thing we help with is
Mhm.
realizing good deals. And there's a lot, just like the laundromat thing, there's a lot of vending routes from the last generation trying to get out of the market. And there's a lot of value add opportunity because there are a lot of the old school Pepsi and Coke machines that only take cash. And so just swapping those out and putting readers on them or swapping out the machine entirely and putting these fancy new mark on them are just ways of value add. So I think if you're not going to buy a route and you're purely going to build it yourself because capital is limited, I'd plan on probably 18 months to be conservative. And the goal would be 20 machines out in the wild.
Okay. Yeah, it actually breaks it down because I know that's averages and everything, but it's the question that most people
Yeah.
want to know. So I have two more things I want to ask you before we wrap it up. Secondly, I want you to tell me about your own kind of passive income journey, like what you're working on, what still gets you up in the morning. But before we do
Yeah.
that, I want to talk about these buying the route. We all know if you're in the entrepreneurial community, especially in the passive income community, I know people who do vending machine routes and they hate it and it doesn't work and it's not successful. So, what defines someone who is successful at this business, who is getting out there, getting it done, and they're making a great income and evangelizing it? Oh, wow, this is the greatest thing. And somebody who's, yeah, tried that, hated it, because it's the same thing in landlording. People are
Mhm.
like, oh, I had some rental houses, they were paying, like they sold them. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Landlording is great. So what separates successful people from the failures, the people who give up?
You know how you have your criteria of like, I'm going to walk away from this house. There are way too many people that want to make a location. They just want their first vending machine location. So they'll say yes.
Mhm.
And that is the number one habit I have to break out of everyone. I'm in this for you to make revenue, not for you to go buy vending machines.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
bottom line, and that's where a great example of this is when I first got into, "Hey, I wanted to scale my route, I got a couple locations." Now when you go from 3 to 10, the profit margins are even better. So I was, like, looking up these, like, location finders for me, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, we'll find you 5 locations." I was like, "Okay, that's great. Is it a 300 unit apartment complex, or is it the Jiffy Lube that's closed on the weekends and closed after 5 PM?"
Mm.
Because 90% of my vending sales is after 7 PM when people have the munchies. And so this is back to I want to create a vending Zillow Zestimate algorithm because you need to be comfortable saying no to locations because the people that hate their vending routes have a lot of machines with a lot of nagging businesses that are complaining about the products being too expensive and blah blah blah. And the reason why is it's the wrong location.
Mm. Okay, so it's just like real estate
100
location.
yeah, I stayed in an Airbnb for the 4th of July, and the property we stayed in is also for sale, and I'm like, "Oh, man, this thing was listed for 1.1 million. Now it's down to 850K. We could probably throw in an offer for 650K." But the problem is the living room, right when you walk in, has a beam across it that's cracked in half.
Oh,
And I'm like, you walk upstairs and all you hear is creak, creak. And
yeah.
I'm okay, yeah, that's a great deal, but what else is gonna come out of this once we
Yeah.
get it locked in? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. What makes a great location? And let's take the cracked beam, right? Our laundry facilities that we have at our apartments are a pain. It between floods and people like, I can't figure out how to use this swipe reader you just installed, to the machine's broken again. Like those kinds of things, like they can really wear someone down. So what makes a great location, and how do you make sure that your equipment is running well without draining the business? What are your expense ratios and things? Like you said something about 40%. Walk us through what that looks like.
Yeah, so a great vending location is just gonna have more foot traffic than another one, and I know this
Mhm.
sounds simple, but you think of like a business. If we look at an employee break room at a business, is a 9 to 5 business where people work from home on Mondays and Fridays, or is this like we have a micro market in a manufacturing plant that has 3 shifts, 24 hours. They work on the weekends, so the people that work from 7 PM to 7 AM are buying breakfast when they get off, and then the people that work from 7 AM to 7 PM are buying dinner when they get off. It's like that flywheel of the location. Same thing with the property. Like you talk about the laundry room. If we look at an apartment complex, is it garden style? And are you putting this in the clubhouse that's only open 9 o'clock when the leasing manager's in? Or is there a package room where they all have to come get their Amazon packages from that you could put it in, or like you said with the laundry, The reality of the laundry room is people only do laundry once a week. So they're getting packages more than once a week. So that's back to one, what's the type of location that's going to have high foot traffic? And then within that location, where is the foot traffic going? And that's what we try to help flush out when we qualify a good location. And it's just it's so simple, and you talk to these people like you're talking about with these vending operators that hate their vending routes. The first question I would ask them is, "What's your revenue per location?" And I
Mhm.
guarantee you it is not good, and now they feel stuck.
Yeah. Usually you hate it. When I was a wedding photographer and I woke up on Saturday morning, I'm like, oh, I have to go to a wedding tonight. I was like, I raised my prices because when I raised
Right.
my prices, it would be like, I don't want to go to a wedding tonight, but boy, am I getting paid well to do so. And I would be
Yeah.
it was a much different photographer who showed up. And so I wasn't even basing what I was charging, honestly, on what market was doing. I really was basing it on what I felt like getting out of bed for, like literally. So when I got paid, I suddenly liked my job a lot.
I love that. It's what is yeah, that's what is whatever your hourly rate is in times it by 100.
Yeah, basically. And we tend to undervalue ourselves early on in a business. Oh, nobody's going to pay me $3,000 to show up and photograph their wedding. And then I realized, like, oh, the other photographers have been talking about, oh, $5,000. I ain't
Yeah.
raising my prices. And so I just didn't believe. But then when I got to the point where I'd been doing it long enough, and I'm just like, I don't feel like going to this wedding today. So I literally would get on the website and raise the price $100 or $500 or whatever it was. I didn't want people to notice, but just little incremental price increases that would be like, okay, next time I'm gonna get out of bed. So if your vending machine is not earning like the average income, of course you're gonna hate it. Maybe I can see you hating it if you're making great money because you have to go to a place and carry a gun to refill it. I can
Yeah.
maybe see that, but probably the number one cause is because it's just not performing.
Yeah, exactly. It's not performing, or you're also not delegating. And that's another thing I always have to coach entrepreneurs is what is your hourly rate worth? Like you just said with regards to the wedding thing is like you can hire a stalker to stock your machines from we just posted out on Craigslist for 20 bucks an hour. We had 48 applicants in the first 3 days.
Wow.
Like, are you doing $20 an hour tasks or are you going to your property and asking the PM for an intro to the sister property? Because that's where you should be focused on. Because as with these ownership groups, they don't just have one property.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. What I'm finding though is like for the family business, like what you mentioned before, it seems like a perfect fit because like we've got these built-in people that we can delegate, which is different than hiring my own kids in my own business because I feel like the revenue in our business, it pays our expenses. Like when our passive income got to the point where it paid our expenses, we were like, we're leaving corporate. But there
Yep.
wasn't a lot of extra to be like, I'm going to pay my kids and hire everybody and delegate everything. The business is not supporting a lot of delegation infrastructure yet at this point. And so having something more that I like, we have a family business doing pitch deck design for investors and things like that, where it's something that we can actually create a product together rather than paying people to work in the business that I'm working in. So it just gets the wheels turning on how to make more money so that you can not only pay the bills like what we're doing, but then have extra to be able to invest on top of that. And I think that's really the beauty of the entrepreneurial message that you're sharing here with very low startup costs and unskilled labor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, so tell us where you're going from here, Mr. Passive, right? People can get a hold of you, MrPassive.com. Like what gets you out of bed in the morning? What are you working towards? What's your passive income dream? Tell me about like where are you going to be in say 5 years if it was completely up to you?
Yeah. So this question is really good and definitely makes you feel hone in on where you need to focus your time in the short term to get where you want to go. But this whole vending industry, to me, if we break it up into the different income streams, so let's start with vending. Vending, unattended retail. If you think of like the Amazon just walk out technology, where you're in the airport now and in the terminals, you can go to a little Hudson bookstore and no one works there. And you just grab whatever you grab. There's a gate where you put your credit card in. You walk in, the AI cameras are watching you. You grab a book and a drink and a snack and you walk out and you don't have to scan anything. Like unattended retail to me is the way of the future with AI. In theory, I see robots. You literally order that Coke from your phone. There's a robot that goes to that vending machine. The little cart grabs the Coke and then goes up to the elevator and comes knocking on your door. I think that that whole space is fascinating to me. And then on the other side, if you look at Airbnbs and stuff, where we've had our most success on the real estate side is just a value add opportunity. Like people go for experiences. So making it, whether that's like you have for us, we have a home by the beach. And so we're just adding to the home, and that's going to cater to people that want to go to the beach. Or if you have a rental by golf courses and you want to cater towards that experience that they're going to go on with the golf trip, or even on the other side of it with regards to all the other kind of long-term rentals, we're doing a lot of stuff that's catering towards kind of that midterm rental where we built a house and an ADU on the same lot, but we set it up with two houses separated by fences. So you wouldn't even know how the zoning was set up. But when you pull up, it looks like two houses with separate yards. So that's the things we do that I think are going to be, until this real estate stuff cools off and there's actually numbers that make sense. I just think the value add thing is going to be where it's at. And yeah, that's what excites me is unattended retail with regards to vending. And then I think in 5 years, even the value add with apartment complexes, we're doing some micro market designs right now where they're building in saunas and bowling alleys and everything under the moon to these properties because they got to position themselves in the market.
Yeah, yeah. The amenities on site, it's really tricky because nobody uses the pool or the racquetball court, but they want it to be there. And it's a really tricky thing. But a vending machine is something so simple, so they don't have to run to the store. What are some of your personal goals that you have coming up in the next, say, 5 years?
I think what you were talking about earlier with your kids, like I would love to build another business with my daughter that's 3. She's going to come up at an age where she's always like, Daddy, why? Daddy, why? And she's so curious and just aligning with where her interests are. And even my youngest, that's now 9 months old, like she's now starting to crawl. And so I just see my interests going to be aligning with their as 2 young daughters. But that whole girl dad thing is definitely something that I take pride in. And that's probably where I'll be focusing on the personal side.
Yeah, I feel like on the show we talk a lot about early retirement, but especially when I'm talking to more active entrepreneurs, because some people come on the show, they've already retired and they're just living on passive income, right? The active
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, it's like, what does your leaving your career look like? Like, how long? What are you going to do after? Tell me about what that look like for you.
Yeah. So I'm going to build this thing until I'm not having fun anymore. I don't have to set an alarm clock like 4:55. My body is ready to rock. So there's definitely energy there in what we're currently doing. But if it becomes a drag or the business becomes too big, like I've seen that too with things where there's just more headaches than what you intended for it, then yeah, we'll just figure that out. I don't have oh, by 40, I need to, there's, to me, on my old kind of life, when I was working in human performance, we did a lot of stuff with the military, and I've seen so many military leaders retire. They didn't even know how to tie their shoes. That's all they knew. And so I'm not like, yes, I want people to get out of corporate America because they hate their boss, but I'm not trying to get out of having a job by age 35. Like, yeah, that'd be amazing. But then I'm an entrepreneur, so I'll just start the next thing. So it's just kind of, that's just the DNA side of me that I don't really look at it as oh, by 40, I'm going to be at the golf course every day because I'd just get bored.
Yeah, a lot of our listeners are in corporate who actually love their jobs, and they're like, "I really just want passive income because I like my
Uh,
job. I feel like I'm paid well. It's a good group. It's a good company. We're building a product that is disruptive, and they really love it." And then we have business owners, "I love my business. I want to keep doing this." But then we have a few people who are listening who are just like, "I got to get out of the corporate." So it just
yeah.
it's nice when we bring on a wider variety of guests, so they can really identify with people and say like, "Now that one." I would really love to do what he's doing without getting bogged down in the shiny object. So I appreciate you sharing your insight, your wisdom, your experience, and just your take on passive income, because that's really what the show is about. And it can take a lot of different forms. And because it's not really an official financial term, I think it can be really confusing to a lot of people and have to be thinking about what is it that I'm actually getting myself into here, actively, passively, whatever. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. How
Yeah.
do people get a hold of you after the show?
Yeah, so they can follow me on Instagram. They can obviously go to mrpassive.com. Also got a Twitter and all those kind of fun social media channels, but Instagram's probably where I post most of my passive income type stuff. And then also my girl, I control that the most. That's probably the easiest place. And then you can go to mrpassive.com and get a hold of me through there. And I just think before we sign off, Emma, I just want to thank you because what you're building has been It's motivating. Like my wife has been talking about wanting to build something like this and leadership and being a mom and this whole like you just got to start thing. Tim Ferriss always says you just call it an experiment because if you call it an experiment, then you're more likely going to start it because
Yeah.
experiments fail, they pass. Like whatever you do, like I remember he was interviewing Ryan Holiday, and Ryan was doing this bookstore in Austin, and Tim told him to call it an experiment. If the bookstore fails during COVID, it was just an experiment, and that's what he did. And then now it's a freaking it's booming. So like the inspiration of what you're building is really cool here.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that. That's how we bought our first apartment building is because I tried to buy other things before that, but I
Yeah.
acted like I was actually gonna buy it, and I went through the whole process, and the thing fell apart. But when we had our first one that actually we closed on, the deeper we went in, the more leg it grew. And so at a certain point, I was like, "We're gonna do this." It took a couple of those failures of just saying, "If it works out, if it keeps growing legs, like, we'll keep going." I think the fear is, like, you don't know what you don't know, but with vending
Yeah.
machine the price of failure is just so much lower than buying your first apartment.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
that's what I like about your story.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Perfect. All right. If you want to reach out to Mike, be sure to go check him out, mrpassive.com. It's one of those things where these kinds of stories that we're sharing with you, life changing. Like 6 years ago, we were in corporate. I was doing a part time real estate wedding photography business, and we were definitely in very different places. So this can change your life. It's not get rich quick, but it is shocking how fast things start to change once you take some action. So I would love to get in touch with you, talk about your own investing journey, entrepreneurial journey, see if we can help you through our private fund at risecapitalinvestments.co. You can go log into our portal. We've got debt deals on there where you can become a private lender. It's like buying a bond. This is what you make. Or we have a few equity deals every once in a while if you want to actually be a partner, a profit sharing partner with us. So go check that out. Partnerwithrise.com, or if you want to get with me directly, it's investwithemma.com. And we just jump on a phone call. We go over what your goals are and see if we can help you, or if not, I can make you some introductions. I've had I don't know what episode this is, 60, 70 episodes of podcast people that I can introduce you to that can help you guys out. So would love to talk to you after the show. And Mike, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Emma. This was awesome.